Hello, everyone. Welcome to our April demonstrations for what the OSS team at CloudBees has been working on for the past month or so. For the last month, we've been spending a lot of time working on the security-related items, and we've seen two security advisories come out in the last week. The first was about the scripting-related security advisory published by Daniel Beck on the 10th of April. I highly recommend going to read this blog and figuring out what's going on with this. It may not affect you. It's only with a certain set of plugins, but I would do recommend that you go back and check that blog for any updates. The second was the announcement of a new safer CLI in 2.5.4. And this is what we're going to be demonstrating today. Another good blog you can go to for follow-up here on this. But for today, we're going to be demonstrating this CLI in action. Lastly, today, we're going to go over a lot of the Windows service improvements for Jenkins agents that Oleg's been working on for the past few months to make those work much better. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jesse and let him go right into the CLI. I'll present to everyone. Okay, Jesse, you've got the ball.
Okay, thank you. So as Patrick mentioned, we have been working on a new Jenkins CLI, command line interface implementation. And the main motivation for this was that we've had a bunch of security advisories over the past couple of years that talked about vulnerabilities in the existing CLI interface. And the main issue with these vulnerabilities was that a lot of them could be launched by unauthenticated users. So they're called pre-auth remote code execution vulnerabilities. And we decided we would like to have a safer default layer for the CLI that wasn't vulnerable to these kinds of issues. So I'm going to show what we've come up with here. So this is Jenkins 2.54, which is the first release to include the new CLI implementation. If you go to Manage Jenkins page, you can see the message that you would see if you were upgrading from an older installation. It would warn you that the old CLI connection mode, which we call remoting mode, because of its ability to do remote code execution, has been deprecated, and so we don't advise anyone to leave that enabled. So I'm going to go to Global Security Configuration page and show you the different options that are available. So I'm going to show you what things will look like if you had a fresh Jenkins 2.54 installation. We would have SSH port disabled. By default, we would have the TCP port disabled by default, and this checkbox would be unchecked by default. So all of these services would be off. And in this default configuration, the new CLI, which is something you would want to download fresh from the CLI page using this download link, would still work out of the box. So it doesn't require, but in the default mode, it doesn't require any special ports or any particular security setup. And that's a nice thing. It means that you only have to have the regular HTTP port service available for Jenkins. That makes it easier to use CLI functionality, even if you're behind a firewall or some sort of reverse proxy or anything like that. It's just going to go over the same HTTP port that all of the other traffic in Jenkins does. So I'm going to show what this looks like. So let's switch to a terminal where I'll run CLI commands. And to make things easier, you'll see that I've predefined an environment variable Jenkins URL. Which I'm going to point to the root URL of my Jenkins installation. If I didn't do this, I would have to add this argument to every CLI command, which would kind of annoying after a while, so I'm not going to do that. And the other thing that I've done is I've set up this admin user a little bit. So this is just with my users. I've just set it up with a simple default password admin, and I've set up SSH public keys, and I have a API token for this user as well. So the easiest way to use the new CLI, so you use java-jar Jenkins CLI.jar as before. I'm going to need to authenticate. So if I just type this command with no options, it will give me an overview of the different options that are available. And you can see that some of these options are new. So HTTP, SSH, and remoting, these options are all new, and they let you select a connection mode. So we'll go over that in a moment. If you don't specify anything, it defaults to HTTP mode. So that's the simplest mode. And we also added a couple of new options, -user, which I'll show, and -logger and -auth. So if I don't give any authentication, I just ask for help. It says you must authenticate to access this Jenkins. I have no anonymous read access enabled for this Jenkins instance. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say -auth admin, my username, and I just have a dummy password here, admin as well. So if I do that, then it gives me a list of commands. Or I can use a simple who am I command, and it says, yes, I recognize you, you're authenticated as admin. Another thing you can do is you can use your API token. So instead of including your password on the command line, which isn't very secure, you can use the API token in Jenkins the same as you do for accessing the REST API. So this is what shows up in this area here. So I've actually got this set up in a file, and another thing you can do with the new auth is you can use an @ and then give the name of a file that has your authentication in it. So that makes sure that the actual API token or password isn't exposed to anything sniffing command lines. So you could just save this in a file with restricted access somewhere and then use it from scripts. So if you do that, then that also works. And you can run almost any of the same CLI commands that you could before. For the most part, they all work the same. There are a few commands that no longer work, or a few command options that no longer work. So I think set build result is one of the ones that doesn't work. Yeah, well, in this case, it's not going to show any interesting information, but let's take another deprecated command, login, that's only used with the old CLI. So if I try to run the login command, it'll say that it can only run in the remoting mode and that you shouldn't use that anymore. So in this case, I go back to configure security. So if I turn on this checkbox that says enable CLI over remoting, then we're back to the insecure mode, but otherwise everything works as before. So if I say -remoting, who am I? It's going to pick up my SSH private key. And in fact, it'll say that, yes, I'm authenticated as admin. I don't know what this exception is about, but it seems to be harmless. So if I'm in remoting mode, I can still use the same commands as before. So login command would ask me for username and password or something like that, and it will still work. So if you aren't too concerned about security and you just want nothing to change, then the only thing you need to do is to add the -remoting option to your CLI commands, and everything will be the same as long as you keep this checkbox checked. And as before, if you you can either have the TCP port on, which is the faster mode, or if you disable it, it will use the remoting mode over HTTP, just like it always did. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that because you shouldn't use it, and it's not any different from what it was before. So SSH mode, this is also a new mode in case you're happy authenticating using SSH private keys. So you just have to use -SSH, and then you also have to specify the username that you want to use. Oops. And that is a u-m-i. And so it says that, yes, indeed, we're authenticated as admin. It's also saying that we're loading a known host entry from my known host file, my tilde known host file. If you, just like any SSH client, it requires a list of known hosts that it to make sure that there's not a man-in-the-middle attack. By default, it will automatically add known host entries the first time you connect to Jenkins for convenience. If you don't trust that, you can pass a strict host key, and then basically you have to have the host key already, and it will bail out if it's not already there. So the SSH mode is actually essentially no different from using command line SSH. So if you have SSH installed, which usually you will on Linux machines at least, on Windows you might have to install PuTTY or some similar command. So if you have SSH client, then you can do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to give the SSH port if it's not 22, and I'm just going to say admin at localhost. Oops, who am I? And it says, yep, I'm admin. So that's pretty easy as well. So you can use whichever you prefer. I'd recommend the native client if you can use it, but if it's inconvenient to set that up, then use the -SSH mode. And if you, let's see. So to go back to the new HTTP mode, so we'll run a command again. It will give me back a response. There's a new option, logger, that lets you get more information about what's going on the client. So if you set it to find logging, then you'll get a few more messages. So it will say that we're defaulting to HTTP connection mode, and then it says where we're trying to connect to. Finer, there's no more messages in that case, but if you go to finest, then you'll get a whole bunch of messages. It'll give you all of the gory details of the new protocol and all of the packets that's sending back and forth to implement this. And I think that was all of the options that we're introducing. I just want to maybe show that the new mode supports almost all of the same commands and command options and different interactive modes as the original rebooting-based CLI did. So, for example, you can use it to run interactive things. If you run the Groovy shell command, if you're an administrator, then you can pop open a Groovy shell. So you can say, Jenkins.instance system message. It's oops. Instance message equals CLI, and you should then see that in the Jenkins instance. You can use Groovy scripting if you're an admin. All of these things. So you can have an interactive shell. This is going over HTTP, so it's actually using a special trick to actually send two HTTP connections to make a duplex channel so that you can have interactive responses going in both directions. Similarly, you can some commands run for a long time. So let's say we can make a little job that runs for a while. Let's try that one. And if you use the build command, then it will schedule a build. It'll start showing you the output as it starts running. So you can see this is showing all of the console output from Jenkins. And if I press Control-C in the console to interrupt it, then it will abort the build because I gave it a -s option. You can also get the config.xml for a job. So this is the usual CLI trick for getting some sort of information out of Jenkins. So if I save that to config.xml, and then I can make some edit to it. And I think it's update job from CLI. We go back to that, you see that it's changed the job configuration from the CLI. So you can use the same things you always did with standard input and standard output, all work. So there's really just a few commands or command options that don't work anymore. So for example, if you say help install -plugin, this is the one of the things that needed to be patched. So if you ask it to install a plugin from a local file, I'm just going to make up a plugin. I don't really have one here, but oops. So if I use the original mode where I gave an absolute file name, it's not going to let me do it because this is only allowed in the old remoting mode. But if you use the new option equal, then it would allow me to install a plugin from standard input. So there's an equivalent to the original functionality that you can still use from the new HTTP mode, or for that matter, from an SSH command. So I think that's about it. So have fun with the new CLI, and of course, most of the CLI functionality is also available via REST, and that hasn't changed at all. So that's actually what we would recommend for most cases, is to go to the REST API, which also, of course, goes straight over HTTP and doesn't have any of the security considerations or special ports or anything like that. So I think that's it from me, unless there are some questions from users. Patrick, anything?
Nothing specific to that in IRC. So hopefully if they are, they'll come through email or on IRC later as people view this.
All right.
Thanks, Jesse. Are you ready to go, Oleg?
I hope so. Okay, do you see my screen?
And now Oleg's going to show us his improvements for Windows on his nice Vista box there.
It's not VistaBox, it's a bare metal Windows 10 installation. But as a disclaimer, this is the first time I do a demo and screen sharing on Windows. So if something goes wrong, I'm sorry about that. Okay.
You're presenting everyone now, Oleg, or I said.
Yeah. So if everybody sees my screen, let's start. You may have seen that in Jenkins 2.50, there were many changes related to Windows services. Here's a list of these changes. As a summary, we released a new version of Windows service wrapper, which has been used as a backend engine for Jenkins Windows services, including Jenkins agents, Windows agents plugin, and also Jenkins code itself.
Yeah, Oleg, your font a little bit bigger.
Okay, I'll try to do that. Okay, is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were some regressions, as you may see here, but by Jenkins 2.53, we have fixed all of them. So I would like to briefly present features which have been introduced by this release and also talk about the background. So as you probably know, I'm a maintainer of Jenkins remoting library, and remoting isn't only about intercommunication layer, but it's also about agent management. And sometimes it's very difficult to differentiate issues. And actually, when we were planning the next steps after GNLP4 release on this summer, we identified a bunch of Windows-related issues which hit Jenkins users. One of the most popular issues is Jenkins node is already connected to this master exception, which probably have been noticed by any Windows user. Windows is not the only reason which causes it in remoting, but one of the most straightforward ways to get this issue is to have a runaway process in Windows. So you may have two versions of slave jar running in parallel and competing for connection to the Jenkins master. In such case, Jenkins agent may fail at all. This is one of the issues which we were trying to address, and for it there is Jenkins 39237, 39231, automatic termination of runaway processes in Windows services. And another issue hitting Windows user was automatic upgrade, because once you install Jenkins agent as a Windows service, you get slave jar located on the local file system, and this slave jar wasn't being updated by Jenkins automatically. So it was common to see Jenkins remoting of the latest version on Jenkins master, but still something like 2.30 on Jenkins agents. 2.30 remoting is 3 years old. It misses much fixes available in Jenkins, and it also impacts stability. So by releasing a new version of Windows Service Wrapper, we were trying to address these issues and also several others listed here. I'm just going to briefly talk about Windows Service Wrapper. As you probably know, it's an independent project. It has been started by Koski in parallel with Jenkins, but actually it's been widely used outside Jenkins. And for a long time, we were using version 1.x. So here's it. Actually, this version had several significant flaws in the area of parameter handling and process termination. So at some point, there was a decision to rewrite Windows Service Wrapper at all. Actually, it wasn't a complete rewrite, but it was significant refactoring. And as you may see in 2.0, there is a bunch of fixed issues and also additional features. One of the main additional features is an extension engine. And via this extension engine, we added support of features like runaway process killer and also shared directory mapper, which is another use case which has been requested by Jenkins users. I'm not going to demo it today unless there are direct questions, but if you're interested, you can reach me out later or just read documentation available here. So let's go back to our system and finally try to start something. So here's a configuration of Jenkins service. This is an XML file which is configured for Windows Service Wrapper. In your instances, you also may see such configurations. This is a kind of sample configuration which you may see in Jenkins 2.50 and beyond. This sample configuration includes additional extension definition, which just invokes runaway process killer, which monitors runaway processes and terminates them if required. So I'm going to install Jenkins as a service. Now I have a kind of clean installation. So I have a Jenkins Word file, the Jenkins service, executable definition, and also some pre-configured data. But there is no Jenkins registered as a service, and I'm going to just install it and show how it works. Okay, so let's start. As you probably see, this is the font is big enough. Okay, I suppose it's fine. So I'm going to check the version of the service. It's 2.0.3, the latest version of Windows Service Wrapper. And I'm just going to install this service. So according to our configuration, it's called Jenkins Automation Server, and the ID is Jenkins Service. So once I click Jenkins Service exe install, let's go to the Service Manager. I refresh the list. And here we may see Jenkins Automation Server. It has been configured automatically. It's something what happens when you launch Windows installers. And after that, I just click Windows Jenkins Server Start. Okay, it has started. Let's check the status. Okay, so it's running. And if we go to Windows Service Manager, we may also see that this automation server is running. So we started a kind of process tree with Windows Service Wrapper. Then there is Java executable and some other stuff which has been triggered for a service. So if we go to our browser and just open the page, okay, I log into the Jenkins. Here is it. So one additional hint which we have actually from the beginning of Jenkins is the additional life cycle for Windows Service. So when you run Jenkins Master as a Windows Service, you are able to restart it safely, to apply updates, etc. But it doesn't impact the current demo. So we have a kind of running instance, but there is one issue which sometimes happens on large instances. For example, another admin may terminate executable due to whatever reason. For example, if I had a script wrapper, it could be interrupted. Or if I'm just an inaccurate admin, I can say, okay, we killed this process. And what happens when I kill this process? We get Windows doesn't automatically terminate the process tree. So now we have a kind of runaway Jenkins master. This Jenkins master still runs. Just a second. So if I log in here, it works well. But yeah, we may see that Jenkins service is not actually running because we have terminated it. And now let's see what was happening on the latest version of Jenkins. Let's disable this extension. And then, okay, just delete it. So I deleted the extension, and now I start the service again. It says that everything has been started, but if we check the status, we may see that the service hasn't been really started. It's a kind of behavior in of the manager. And if we go to the configuration, we may see that service wrapper has just started executable and everything seemed to be fine. But if we open error log, this is Jenkins output, we may see here that Jenkins just failed to start because many stuff, but yeah, actually address already in use because we have a runaway process. So by occasional action, we somehow terminated our Jenkins instance, and now it's completely malfunctional until we terminate this runaway process. For Jenkins slaves, it may be even more dangerous because it causes unpredictable behavior. But in the case of Jenkins Master, there are maybe corner cases. For example, when you launch service on a different port afterwards, when running Jenkins instances compete for Jenkins home and finally terminate it. So I'm going to just kill this process now because we cannot do anything with it right now. And let's try to have a more clean demo with a new feature. Okay, so sorry. Service can accept control. Let's revert our configuration and start the service again. And what? We've just broken the configuration. I save it again, start again. Okay. Now we have running instance of Jenkins. Let's try to kill it again. We have a runaway process. And let's then restart our Jenkins instance. You may see that there is a Jenkins exe which started Java exe, and the runaway process has been terminated. If we go to wrapper log, we may see this similar information. So it discovered a runaway process and then tried to send SIGINT to it. It's just a common signal to interrupt the process, but you may see it failed immediately because it cannot attach to the service console in order to see this, send this signal, and the user has no enough permissions. So it's just then we just invoke force kill against the entire process tree and then restart it. So after that, we get a stable Jenkins master which will survive all such mistakes, and effectively it allows to secure your Jenkins home. Pretty same issue happens with Jenkins agent, and I'm going to briefly show it. So I'm going to Windows Service Agent. Let's try to launch it. Now I have no configuration. Okay. So yes, this file is kind of dangerous. And you may see that the screens are very small because I'm running on the Retina display, which is not well supported by the UI framework being used by Agent Installer. But I click Run. There is even more small window, which actually says that the agent has been connected. So here's our agent, and I'm just trying to install it as a Windows service. It's not going to work because I'm running on Windows 10, which prohibits this installation by default. So you may not able to see this exception, but it just says that the access is denied. So it's not going to work, but the good news is that we've got all the configuration structure within file system. So I go to the agent, and here we may see that there is executable, slave XML, slave jar, etc., which have been automatically propagated by the service. And I just go to the configuration, to the agent. And this is a default configuration which has been initiated by Jenkins. Now this one. So in this configuration, now we have not only a startup of Jenkins and not only a runaway process killer, but also additional handling of failures. So if agent service fails, Jenkins will automatically restart it. But there is a problem with such behavior, which I'm going to show. I'm going to remove this configuration again. Firstly, we need to install this agent as a service. So I terminate this agent. It has been disconnected. Now I install this agent as a service. And then I start it. Okay, so this is our agent. We have a kind of, now we have two processes, one for Jenkins service, another one for Jenkins slave. Unfortunately, this file hasn't been renamed as a part of Jenkins 2, but we hope to do it later. So let's stop this service for a while, and let's totally break this instance. Not totally break, but it's going to hurt. So I remove this runaway process killer, and actually this is a kind of default configuration you're getting on previous versions. So there is automatic failover, but there is no runaway process killer. So I start this agent again. He's Jenkins slave, and I kill the executable in order to cause the runaway process. And what do we see now? We may see that there is runaway agent process, and you may see here that there are attempts to connect Jenkins slave because there is automatic failover of the service. So if we go to slave XML, not to slave XML, to the log, so here's our Jenkins error log. And this error log says what? That the agent is already connected to the master. So effectively, this is an issue which has been reported by many people before. And unfortunately, there is no way to fix it without runaway process killer. So I'm going to kill this process and restore the configuration. And yeah, I'm also going to stop this agent if it was running. Yes. So Jenkins slave XML again, Control Z, Control Z. Okay, I start the service again. Okay, so yeah, this is wrong, service manager. So here we have exe service, and now I just killed the process. Have I killed the pro? Yeah. I'm trying to kill it again just to show it. So it causes almost immediate failover because we just do not see what happens. But if we go here, we may see that. So let's open a wrapper log. Yeah, this one. And in this wrapper log, we may see that the process has been discovered and terminated automatically. So that's all with this feature, but I'm also going to show you how automatic upgrade works. For a long time, we had automatic upgrade of Windows Service Wrapper, but we had no upgrade of slave jar. Now we have it. So I have a couple of prepared files, remoting 2.32, which is 3 years old, then slave, and Windows Service Wrapper 1.18, which also has no features we have in Windows Service Wrapper 2. So I copy these files and just replace files which we have on the agent. So what do we have now? Windows slave exe is pretty old. If we invoke the command for remoting jar, it will be even old, which has no version visualization at all, if I recall correctly. Okay. Yeah. So there is not even version. Let's start this service. Okay. So let's go to Windows agent. We may see that this agent has been connected, but if we open system information, we may see that Windows slave has version 2.32, so it's pretty old. We still can run everything we want. So here's a sample job which just executes hello world on the instance, it runs, but the protocol is pretty unstable. So in new version of Windows Service Wrapper, it's possible to enable automatic download of the slave jar. So if we go to the Jenkins slave XML, there is option download from whatever. This option is disabled by default because my instance isn't connected via HTTPS. But if we connect it, then this option will be enabled. On HTTP, I can say that this option is enabled by default. Control S. Now on the next upgrade, slave jar will be updated to the version we have on the Windows Server. Regarding Windows Service Wrapper, as I said, it will be upgraded automatically. So if we just check the version now, the version is 2.0.3. But actually, Jenkins itself still runs with the previous version because it happens automatically by Jenkins plugins. So it requires the ready channel, and the update may happen only after restart. So let's restart our instance. Yeah, just restart. Let's see what has happened. So we will unlikely see something interesting in the logs, but if we go to the Windows agent, system information, now it runs on 3.7. So it has silently upgraded the version on the startup, and it means that on the new Windows service, we will be always getting the version available on the master. So all updates we are pushing to remoting, including stability, you will be getting them out of the box without configuring out automatic infrastructure. So that's all I wanted to show today. There is some ongoing work on Windows services. There is an incoming release Windows Service Wrapper 2.1. There will be additional improvements to download commands. For example, download with authentication and additional fail on error flags. There will be also improvements for delayed start, which is pretty sensitive for Windows services stability and also for additional internal issues. And of course, it's just the beginning, and I hope that there will be much more fixes later. So that's it for me. Are there any questions?
There was a question a while back from Jesse. I think it was answered though in the chat about the default. I forget what it was.
Yeah, default life cycle.
Yeah.
The problem is that Jenkins is unable to automatically determine it runs under Windows Service Wrapper. At least it doesn't do it now. So if you don't specify this lifecycle explicitly, you will get a Windows lifecycle, which is pretty different from Windows Service.
Okay, that was the only question I saw. So thanks, Jesse, and thanks, Oleg, for the demos today. We'll be back next month on the second Thursday of May to show what's latest, and hopefully have some great things to show by then. So thanks, everyone, and enjoy your day.
Bye.